Welcome to
Oh.
oh yeah, I
What's the name of this podcast?
know.
I told somebody the other
Hmm.
day that it was called Astrology of the Unsolved, and and they were like, I can't find it, and I was like, oh,
I did that too. Well,
that's not the name.
originally it was
Yeah,
called that, and I
yeah,
didn't think it rolled off the tongue, so I changed it. But now I always say unsolved, and I feel like it's
yeah.
too late to change it. So I don't know.
Anyway, yeah. So welcome to Astrology of the Unknown. I am your host, Joseph Mulholland.
And I'm your other host, William Holloway.
Yeah, welcome everybody. Hi, William. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. How's your week been? You said it's rainy there?
It's rainy, a little chilly, but I'm into it. I mean, I live
Yeah.
in the Northwest. I'm used to it.
It's kind of
Cozy a little.
yeah, the temperature finally it's like finally feels like fall here now. I mean, and it's also like almost dark outside and it's 4:30. So,
Yeah,
um but I threw my back out a couple of weeks ago and it finally started feeling better yesterday. So I'm like celebrating that small win.
nice. Good, good.
Yeah, because you know, I'm a kind of a baby when I don't feel well. So I was definitely like having existential crisis after existential crisis about what if my back never gets better?
Well, I mean, that's fair, but at least it wasn't an existential crisis because you were abducted by aliens.
Right. So that's actually what we're going to be talking about today. So let's just jump right in. Nice segue.
Well, first, have you ever seen a UFO?
Oh
Like,
my
what's your
gosh.
answer to that?
So, okay. So I grew up in the country. I grew up in the middle of nowhere in Western New York, and where I grew up, you could see like pretty much every star in the sky. I don't even think you can anymore. I think light pollution has kind of ruined that area a little bit. But when I was a kid, I remember you could see everything. And I used to see stuff just kind of like floating around in the sky. Like not like they look like stars, you know what I mean? Like it wasn't anything like I didn't have any like close encounters of the third kind, but like you'd sit on the back porch at night and just look up at the sky and you'd see like billions of stars and you would occasionally just like see a little star move and then it would like move this way. And it would just kind of like it didn't have any sort of rhyme or reason, but I never knew what it was. Half the time I thought my mind was playing tricks on me, but in 2014, I did see a UFO above Penn Station in Baltimore when I was walking home from the gym. And there was only me and then this like woman who didn't speaking, or at least she didn't speak English. I didn't hear her speaking any English. She was speaking Spanish. But we both saw this thing above Penn Station, even though it was the middle of the day, like there wasn't really anybody else around. It was very weird. It was just me and this woman. I don't know if she was waiting for a bus or what, but this thing just kind of like appeared above Penn Station, and it wasn't right above. I mean, it was probably like well over 100 feet, if not more, above the top of Penn Station. It was pretty high up, but it just kind of looked like a ball, and it looked like it looked like circular like TV static.
Weird.
And it didn't make any noise and it just kind of looked like this staticky ball and it kind of like pulsed. It got like a little big like it kind of like it got bigger and smaller and I actually noticed that it was kind of beating like when my heart rate started going up when I was like as I was watching it and realizing what I was looking at or like realizing that I didn't know what I was looking at, like I could feel my heart start pounding out of my chest and I realized that this thing was kind of like pulsing with my heart. beats. It was
Whoa.
very strange. And then this woman just started screaming in Spanish. She was like praying. It was very weird.
Wow.
And then the thing just like it started pulsing bigger, but the bigger it got, the less opaque it became. It kind of became more see-through, and then it just like
Hmm.
disappeared. It was very weird. It was very strange.
Wow.
Um,
Wild.
yeah, but I have no idea what it was. No clue. It could, I mean, it could have been anything. It could have been, I really honestly don't know.
Yeah.
Kind of looked like when you see, when I say it looked kind of staticky, it kind of looked like when you see a full moon during the day. It doesn't look like you fully like tuned into the radio station. You know what I mean? It's like a little like you can see it, you know it's there, but it's like it kind of looks a little fuzzy, it looks a little discombobulated.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how that's like the closest thing I can say to what it looked like. But I know you have a really crazy story.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I saw a UFO when I was like 19. I want to say I was about 19. It was right before I moved away from home. So it was the late 90s and it was a summer and I was out behind an elementary school. It was like, like there's like a field and like a park and it was after hours. The sun was down. It was nighttime. I want to say it was like 8 p.m. And I was with a couple friends and we were just walking around as young people that aren't old enough to go to bars do.
Hmm.
And it was just dark and we were just walking around back there. One, two, three. I think there was four of us and heard this loud bass sound and I couldn't tell where it was coming from. So I just thought it was like a car that was nearby. It was so loud. It took up like we all noticed it. And I just remember like laughing around and like dancing to it. I don't know why, but I just remember dancing to this like bass sound. And
Weird.
then, yeah, and then it stopped and it was completely silent. And then right above the trees, a giant, it was bigger than about the size of a bus, I guess you could say a regular sized bus, just comes slowly floating, no noise whatsoever, slowly floating over the trees and it was about rectangular and had a bunch of lights underneath of it. And it was moving so slow, I could see windows in the side of it. And it was just bright light coming out of it. Kind of like that light right there, where you can't see anything. It's just a light coming out of the
Yeah.
window. And we were just still. And it happened so fast, but it also was like happening in slow motion. And it's coming over us. And we're looking at it. I'm looking at all the different lights. There's different colored lights. And then as it starts to go over the field, it almost like got smaller as it was going away. So it like it was shrinking, but like it was weird. It almost looked like it was going in a hole in the sky, and then it just disappeared.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was that. And it was one of the wildest experiences of my life, to be honest, because I honestly did never really thought much about UFOs or any of that beforehand.
Yeah, I was gonna
Um,
ask you, like, did that make you a believer? Like, what do you
yeah,
think?
definitely. I mean, I'm not sure I believe that, aliens from another planet get in these spaceships and come down here. I think if anything, it's more likely that they're coming from another dimension.
Hmm.
I feel I feel like I have more I believe more in the concept of other dimensions and things that are like here all the time that we can't see, that
Yeah.
sometimes pierce the veil, if you want to call it that. So I tend to think of UFOs and aliens along that line. It doesn't mean I don't, maybe they do come from another planet in another galaxy and this is how they travel. I don't know. But I don't know. I
Yeah.
just think there's a lot of weird
Wow.
stuff out there that we don't understand. And
Yeah.
this is definitely one of them.
That's kind of how I feel too.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
And let's just jump right in.
Hmm.
So, it was the night of October 11th, 1973. Two men by the names of Charlie Hickson and Kelvin Parker were fishing on the Pascagoula River in Pascagoula, Mississippi, when they saw and experienced something that would change their lives forever. Pascagoula was described as a once sleepy fishing town until around the 1950s when a shipyard called Ingalls Shipbuilding was built and began manufacturing destroyers for the U.S. Navy. Charlie
Hmm.
Hickson and his son Eddie moved there in the late 60s because Charlie got a job at the shipyard. Eddie, his son, says that his dad Charlie was his best friend and an excellent fisherman. Eddie, who was a teenager at the time, met Kelvin Parker, who was also a teenager at the time, and they both attended the same high school and became really good friends. Kelvin and his father were very close with Charlie and Eddie Hickson. They went camping and fishing together, and Charlie even got Kelvin a job at the shipyard. So that kind of sets the scene for the evening of October 11th, 1973. After work, Charlie and Calvin decided to go fishing on the Pascagoula River, and that's where the story begins. Charlie stated later on that he had just gotten a bite on his fishing line. He was getting ready to reel it in, but when he turned around to grab his fishing pole, he froze in fear. He heard a zipping sound, and around 60 to 70 feet away, he saw a strange craft descending toward the ground. The craft actually came down and hovered just above the ground, but never actually landed. It had strange blue flickering lights, and neither Kelvin nor Charlie had ever seen anything like it before. Charlie said it seemed to hold him as if he was spellbound. In his mind, he thought, maybe this thing will just leave. Maybe we can make a run for it and get in the car and get out of here. But neither of them could really move.
Hmm.
All of a sudden, the side of the craft opened and three beings came out. They also never touched the ground. They just kind of hovered a couple feet off of the ground.
Eee.
Two of the beings went to Charlie and one went to Kelvin. They didn't see any eyes or any distinguishable features on, I guess, what you could call their faces, but they did notice that in the center of their faces, there was a protrusion that came out almost like a human nose. They didn't have necks. They basically just had heads on top of these weird bodies, I guess.
Yeah.
They didn't have hands, but they had claws kind of like a lobster. The beings grabbed the men who were frozen. Charlie stated he wasn't sure if it was fear or if they had them under some sort of spell. The second Calvin was approached and grabbed by one of the beings, he fainted. According to Calvin, they didn't speak, but they made some humming noises. But again, he also passed out, so he wasn't the most observant or present in the situation, which I will touch on later. Two of the beings took Charlie by the arms and walked him into the craft, which he described as being like a giant light bulb. Like he said, it felt like I was inside of a giant light bulb because it was so bright.
Whoa.
He wondered where Calvin was and said that he saw what looked like a giant eyeball coming out from one of the walls inside of the craft. He tried to close his eyes, but he was unable to. The giant eye came close to Charlie, about 6 inches from his face, and began to scan his entire body. He was,
Whoa.
yeah. So I guess it was like it came kind of came right in front of his face and then like moved down his body.
Reminds me of Flight of the Navigator. Remember Flight of the Navigator?
Yep.
I loved that movie.
Yeah. He was in the craft for what felt like 30 minutes. And when the beings brought him out and returned him to where he had been fishing, Charlie said that Kelvin was just standing at the edge of the river with his arms outstretched above him, staring out at nothing like he was frozen.
Wow.
So Calvin had fainted. The beings took Charlie into the ship. And when they brought him out, Calvin was just kind of standing like this, like just staring out at nothing.
Whoa.
Once Charlie was returned to the spot in which he was captured, he heard that zipping sound again and turned around to see the flashing blue lights and the craft disappeared almost instantly.
Mm.
Fearing that this might be the start of some kind of invasion, the men went to the police station that night to report what they had experienced. The police department reported that the men came in. Now, these reports were a little wonky. Some sources said that they arrived at the police station around 8:30 or 9. Other reports say that they were there closer to like 11 p.m. But it was that night, and that they were both hysterical. Calvin had been crying. One officer described them as climbing the walls. So I guess that they were like pretty freaked out.
Yeah.
Calvin Parker describes the incident with Sheriff Fred Diamond as more of an interrogation than anything else. They didn't feel like law enforcement really believed them. However, Charlie and Calvin were by themselves at one point in an interrogation room, and they had been recorded without their knowledge.
Right.
So if they had been lying, this would have been the perfect moment for their cover to be blown, because they were by themselves and they didn't know that they were being recorded. So this would have been the perfect moment for them to debrief on this lie that they had told.
Yeah.
But that didn't happen. In the recording, they expressed fear of not knowing what they had seen, confusion over what they had seen, and Calvin at one point started crying in the recording, recalling that he had passed out and that he had never passed out in his life before.
Hmm.
They both sounded really scared. However, for whatever reason, this recording didn't actually surface and become public knowledge until 2020.
Oh, really?
Yep. So it just kind of shows you that, they really believed what they saw.
Yeah.
Um, Calvin's wife, Waynette, who was his fiance at the time, says that it took Calvin 3 or 4 days to really tell her what happened, and that he really didn't tell her much because he wanted to protect her. She knew something weird had happened, but he didn't really want to get into specifics. But this was kind of hard to do because media had caught wind of what happened and stories started being published about the incident in local papers and news stations. And then before you knew it, the national media had picked up the story. Calvin thought Charlie may have leaked the story, but there's no evidence of this. Even Rolling Stone wrote a story about it.
Hmm.
People in the town started freaking out and putting aluminum foils on their windows and all that stuff. Well, actually, there were two camps. There was the camp that kind of freaked out and tinfoil hat, and then there were the
Yeah.
people who kind of just disregarded it
Sure.
and thought that they were making it up because I think that that's probably the most logical explanation in this. And if it's something that's difficult to explain it or hard to explain or impossible to explain, it's easier to just disprove it.
Absolutely. Yep.
That week after the story broke, the sheriff's department in Pascagoula received 2 to 3 thousand calls. Most of them were from people who were concerned or scared, but there were a few people in the greater Jackson County area who did report seeing those blue lights in the sky that resembled the lights that these two men had seen. People in the town, like I said, were divided. They either freaked out about it or dismissed it as a joke. One piece of info that's important to mention here is that the area where Charlie and Calvin were fishing was near the Pascagoula drawbridge, which was monitored and operated 24/7 at that time by two bridge tenders on
Hmm.
either side of the bridge. Neither of the bridge tenders saw anything that night, which is
Nothing. Not even lights. They didn't even see lights.
nope. But there were multiple reports of those sightings in the area during that time. So in addition to what Charlie and Kelvin experienced, there were two additional sightings in Pascagoula and one in Gauter. I don't know how to pronounce it. It's Gautier,
In
which is
another town over or
the
something.
neighboring town in Jackson County. So there were four total sightings the night of October 11th, 1973.
Okay.
And then there was an additional sighting in Pascagoula on October 15th, 1973.
Oh.
I'm not going to go into great detail about them. Because their experiences were nothing like Charlie and Calvin's.
Yeah.
They just
Seeing
kind of,
lights in the sky kind of
but
thing.
it confirmed their stories. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All of these encounters had similar descriptions in terms of the craft, the colors of the lights, the zipping sound, the hovering just above the ground but not quite landing. Most of these people didn't know each other, and they all had independent stories. So the encounter and the reaction from the town affected both men very differently. They were both flooded by media requests so that they could tell their stories. Now, Charlie's response to Charlie Hickman, the older gentleman, his response to everything was to talk about it. He appeared on Johnny Carson,
Hmm.
Dick Cavett. He didn't miss an opportunity to talk about the abduction. He gave a series of performances where he talked about the experience in front of audiences with hypnotists and psychics. He also wrote a book, recorded an album, and he did various radio and TV appearances throughout the years. But according to his son Eddie, Charlie only asked to be compensated the rate of a day's work at the shipyard for any of his appearances.
He
That kind
wanted
of
to get the story out there.
Yeah, so that kind of debunks the theory that he was just trying to make a quick buck.
But even still, I mean, if you think about it, like yeah, I'm gonna make money off of this. Like, if someone's gonna offer me money to talk about this wild experience I had, I'm gonna take that money.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it
You
too.
know? Like, come on now.
So compared to Charlie and Charlie's response to everything, Calvin's response to everything was to shut down completely. His wife, Wynette, says that when she saw him after the incident, he hugged her for a very long time and that he was kind of shaking and his mouth was quivering. He seemed traumatized and unsettled. He actually had to go to the emergency room at one point because of his nerves, and it was reported that he took his rage out on the emergency room and kind of wrecked it.
Mm,
He just wanted to forget about all of it. He wanted to forget anything ever happened. And to make matters worse, Calvin felt like the only person he could talk to about it betrayed him by telling the world what happened. He didn't feel like he could talk to anyone and he questioned his mental health. He felt like Charlie's response to everything was kind of an invasion to his personal privacy. It wasn't until a second sighting in 1993 that Kelvin really opened up to his wife, Waynette, about what had happened. Now, I don't know the specifics about that second encounter, but it seemed like it was a lot more pleasant and not as scary as the first encounter.
right.
But, he kept the details of that initial encounter a secret from Waynette for 20 years.
Wow.
So she knew that there was an alien encounter. She knew that they experienced something, but she didn't know the details of any of it.
You want to talk about it. It's like when men go to war.
Yep. Yep. Charlie also had a second sighting of the same beings one day in 1974, so a year after the initial
Oh.
abduction.
And they
Um,
said, go on Johnny Carson and talk about it.
well, it's weird. It was like the way his son describes it. His son was like, he's just sitting under a tree eating an orange.
You know those alien paintings where all the aliens, women have giant breasts, and this guy just like he's a painter
Oh,
and he keeps painting that. There for some reason it reminds me of that. And it's like,
have you
why do
ever
all these aliens have these giant tits?
do you remember? Okay, quick side note. I'm almost
Yeah.
done telling the story, but quick side note. Do you remember when I worked at Golden West and
Yeah.
um, we used to have art shows. Golden West is a restaurant and bar in Baltimore. And there was this one guy who had all this like crazy alien art, and
Oh
his
yeah.
whole exhibit actually got pulled down because it was like pretty X-rated. Like there was a picture of a, a female alien on her hands and knees with like her ass up in the air, and she was totally naked and she had like these big knockers and you could see
There's like a whole community of like men that are
oh,
really into alien tits.
yeah, and you could see her hole between me down there, everything. Anyway,
Funny.
um, like I said, Charlie also had a second sighting in 1974. He saw two of these beings standing behind a tree, and he said that it felt like a radio station was tuning into his brain when he saw them, and he just kind of heard this voice in his mind that said, "We mean you no harm, and we will be back." However, Charlie Hickman did pass away on June 19th, 1995, and Calvin Parker passed away on August 24th, 2023.
Oh, it's recent.
For as incredible as the story is, there has been a fair amount of skepticism over the years. Both Charlie and Calvin refused to take polygraph tests. Calvin also admits, that he passed out at the beginning of the experience and didn't really come to until right before it ended. And it's been suggested that Calvin's corroboration of the story was the result of what's called suggestibility, meaning that he believed what happened because Charlie told him after the fact and because he had a strange experience at the beginning of it, which is, he passed out, which he had never passed out before. So
Yeah.
he trusted he trusted Charlie's account of the events because he himself experienced something that he had never experienced before,
Right.
just passing out. So what really happened? Was this an elaborate hoax? What about everyone else who saw those crafts and those blue lights? Was that also the result of suggestibility based on the amount of media attention the initial story received out of the gate? I know we haven't really covered UFO stories on this podcast before, but I'm really excited to kind of hear what the astrology has to say. But
Yeah.
those are the recorded facts in the in the Pascagoula incident. So now I'm going to turn it over to you
Cool.
and see what you have to say about it.
Can you see the chart?
Yep.
Okay. So I too was not quite sure how to approach this at first because if they were abducted by aliens, that's not really a crime, but there are signatures to where you can look for like whether someone's actually been abducted or not. So I looked for those. I also looked to see if there was any indication that they were making it up, if they were lying. This one was pretty fascinating. So the Pascagoula alien abduction happened on October 11th, 1973. I put 9 p.m. because that was the time that all the accounts I could find said about when it happened was 9 p.m. And that chart gives us a Gemini rising, which is perfect because Gemini is ruled by Mercury. Gemini, right in front, is telling us that there are two people involved. There were two, and there were the two men. So that Mercury in Scorpio rules the men. Also, that Mercury in Scorpio is in the sixth house. So it speaks to the fact that they work together, but also like when the ruler of the victim is in the sixth house, it can mean that they were being stalked or there's
Ooh,
like surveillance, like somebody was watching them. So that's just a little bit about the ruler of the victims. I feel weird saying victims because they're not really, but we'll call them victims
yeah.
for those not watching and you're just listening, I'm going to describe the chart now. I'm going to go around the chart. So I already said first that we have the Gemini rising. Now let's go to the second house. So the second house, it's something that I learned more recently. It makes me want to go back a little bit because I'm not sure I considered this as much, but you want to look at the second house when we're looking at an abduction. And we have a very powerful planet in the second house. We have Saturn in Cancer. When I say it's powerful, it's because Saturn was just about to retrograde. So it was standing still. It was very, very potent. Saturn is about structure and about limitations. So this makes me think about how like they were not only trapped, but they couldn't move. Like they were just kind of frozen, right? They were limited in what they could do. And Cancer is like, it's kind of like thinking about them being like they were taken care of almost, like it wasn't like you said before, like it wasn't obviously it was scary, but there wasn't any violence involved. They were in the care of whatever they were in the care of, right? But it wasn't necessarily like a violent thing. So Saturn and Cancer feels pretty appropriate. We don't have any other planets until we get to the fifth house. So the fifth house has the Sun, Uranus, and Pluto. As we've said before on the podcast, the Sun is about the heart of the matter. And so, a couple things. The sun in Libra, the heart of the matter is the relationship between these men, too. Like, because if you think about it, like, this affected their relationship. He didn't have the person he could turn to, right? I mean, it's not revealing anything really. But another thing is that, the sun is ruled by that Venus in Sagittarius, and
Hmm.
Sagittarius can be about travel, it can be about adventure, it can be about exploring, it can be about like going somewhere. We also like when it comes to abductions, we want to look at Pluto. Pluto is usually involved when abductions are part of the story. And we've got Pluto in Libra. Pluto is making a very strong aspect almost to the second. It is squaring that Saturn in the second
Hmm.
house of abductions. So I think it's just like kind of telling us that an abduction happened.
Right.
And then Uranus, I think, is just telling us, how shocking the event is, how, weird it is, right? And then with all that being in the fifth house, with the sun being in the fifth house, it speaks to the when the incident happened, they were enjoying themselves, right? Like they had just
Yeah.
work and they were fishing, so that's like the fun time. Well, now we go to the sixth house, which has that Mercury in Scorpio, which represents the victims. Again, so this speaks to they worked together, they had just gotten off work. Venus is right there in Sagittarius. I think that, again, speaking to, well, the Sagittarius side of it, speaking to like adventure or journeys or new experiences. And
Hmm.
then, but also just speaking to that the fact that they have a relationship, right? They're not just coworkers, that they're like kind of like friends
Yeah.
and they were enjoying each other's time together, which is very Venus. Venus is conjunct Neptune. I mean, they did have a beer. I know that. I don't think that it was decided that they were drunk, but it is true that one of them or both of them had a beer. But Neptune also is about, again, like the thinning of the veil, like what weird things are happening in the universe that we don't understand. It's very Neptunian. So yeah, that's the sixth house. So now we go to the seventh house. The descendant represents the abductors, or, I don't want to say perpetrators, we'll just call them the abductors, the aliens, whatever, the UFO. The descendant's in Sagittarius. So that means that Jupiter is the ruler.
Hmm.
And Jupiter had also gestation to go direct, the opposite of Saturn. So it was a very strong Jupiter. And Jupiter can be about travel, it can be about adventure, like I was saying, all this other stuff about Sagittarius. That Jupiter is in Aquarius. The
Wow.
future, aliens, it's very like technology, things of the future, very Aquarius. The ninth house is about traveling to a far, far away place, but also with Jupiter being in the ninth, that's like the abductors traveled from very far away. They came from far away.
Oh,
Yeah. So that's kind of cool.
that's cool. That is really cool. I like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, me too. The next planet over is in the 11th house. That's the moon. The moon is like a secondary significator for the victims. And I think the moon in the 11th, because the 11th can be about like groups of people. So I think it's telling us that this happened to more than one person. It's also
Yeah.
speaking to the fact that there were witnesses that saw the lights. Oh, and then the other thing about it that's interesting is that that moon is ruled by Mars, which is in the 12th house.
Mm.
But before we talk about that Mars, if anyone watching can see, they're probably wondering why I haven't even brought it up yet. But there was a full moon happening. And it wasn't just like around a full moon, it was exact. It was that full moon was happening at that moment.
Whoa, that's crazy.
Yeah. And that full moon is ruled by that Mars and Taurus in the 12th house. So it's like something hidden. And with that Mars ruling over the sixth house where Mercury is, I think it just emphasizes again being watched, something hidden, like a hidden thing that you didn't see coming. And remember, the 12th house is about things you can't see. So now, before we get to the asteroids, I wanted to say that I was looking at the declination, which is when you're looking at out of bounds planets and all that stuff. Nothing was out of bounds, but the moon, Mars, and Pluto are all parallel in declination, which means it was like a super conjunction. So the moon,
Okay.
which is the victims, Mars, which rules that full moon that's hidden in the 12th house, and then Pluto, the planet of abduction, were essentially having like a super conjunction.
Wow.
So I don't know. It screams abduction to me, you know?
That is crazy. That is
Yeah,
so bizarre.
it really is. So then I was like, all right, now I want to look at the asteroids because then we can, I wanted to look at all the asteroids that could indicate like lying or making stuff up or like a
Uh-huh.
hoax. None of them were making any strong aspects to anything.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, yeah. So I was like, okay, well, they're not lying. I mean, they believe what happened to them. Something happened to them. So now get ready to have some hairs on the back of your neck stand up a little bit. Here come the asteroids. Jupiter was conjunct an asteroid named Manwe, Manwe. Remember, Jupiter represents the aliens here.
Right.
Manwe was a elf king, a fictional character in a Tolkien book. He was the lord of the air, wind, and clouds. Birds were his servants, most sacred of all being the eagle who surveyed the land and brought back information to him.
Wow.
Yeah.
Ah! Oh my
I know.
God.
I know. Isn't that crazy? All right, next asteroid. So, Odysseus, the asteroid Odysseus, conjunct the moon, the victims. This shows up when someone is exiled, feeling estranged, or being forced to go far away from home.
Mm.
Yeah. Okay, so then the moon, again, the moon, the victims, was sextile an asteroid named Cassandra. Cassandra was a Trojan priestess. She promised to give her love to Apollo if he gave her the gift of seeing the future. She went back on her word, and he was pissed, so he cursed her with always uttering true prophecies that will never be believed.
Whoa.
So the sun was opposing three asteroids that were conjunct. There are three asteroids that were conjunct: Pythia, Altresia, and Photographica. So Pythia was a high priestess of the temple of Apollo at Delphi, known as the Oracle of Delphi. The Pythia supposedly inspired to prophecy by breathing in the gases coming from the deep chasm in the earth. This asteroid can be related to tuning into messages from other realms or having your mind in a fog. Then Altagira is related to finding the answers to your problems in your dreams. Photographica is about the brain's ability to retain and interpret visual imagery.
Ooh.
So that just made me think a little bit about, how like those guys, some people saw and some people didn't. It's almost like
Like if your mind isn't open to it, you aren't going to see it.
maybe, or like what they experienced was real. But if it was, say, related to being like kind of taken to another dimension or part way in between, right? Maybe other people aren't seeing this thing that you're experiencing. And it
Mm.
might all have been happening in their minds, but it was really happening, right?
Gotcha. Okay.
Kind of like how we said that it was like the radio was tuning.
Yep.
And that's what I got. And I'll tell you, my final conclusion is that
Yeah.
I think that something happened to them. They weren't lying. Yeah. I mean, that's all we can really come to, right? Because I don't know that I can get what exactly happened
Yeah.
out of the chart, but I do find it interesting that a lot of the chart kind of points to being taken away. Then there's all this dream kind of like, yeah.
So what I'm hearing is we may have actually solved something.
Yeah, or like I
Well,
feel
like,
very confident with this one that they didn't make it up.
yeah, and I mean, I think I think the astrology says that. I think, that little bit of the story that at the beginning where they were being recorded without their knowledge at the police station and they were left alone and they both kind of like lost their minds in the conversation and expressed how scared they were and how they couldn't like what was that? I don't know what that was. I've
Mhm.
never fainted before. Like this that was so crazy. Like just the fact that they didn't tear down the facade when
Yeah.
they were left alone, like that and the astrology and just the way that it affected both of them throughout their lives. I think that if they were both making it up, it would have I think I think we would have seen them more in lockstep with each other. I don't think that Calvin would have had all those psychological effects and like,
Right.
had to, had all these it problems with anxiety and like, uh, kind of going inward. I think if they made it up, it would have been for a reason, right? And so
Yeah.
they both would have reacted the same way. They both probably would have gotten on the media train and
Right.
shared their story. They did both write books about the experience. So
I'd be curious to read those books.
yeah, whatever it was, we don't, I don't think we can say definitively what it was that they experienced, but I think that everything we've talked about really points to the fact that whatever it was that they experienced, it was real to them.
It was real to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, pack it up. We're done here.
Yep. Case closed.
Yep. All right. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. And
Yeah,
until next time, keep your powder dry and your mystery solved.
that's right.
Yeah, powder. Don't get it wet.
Don't get that wet.